So thank you for the invitation to present to you today around tips for starting to increase your physical activity, small steps for big impact. And during the course of today's presentation, I'm going to focus on three main areas. Firstly, understanding physical activity. What is it we're talking about? And trying to make it more manageable for you to think about how you can incorporate physical activity into your daily lives. Secondly, then I want to reflect on how we change behaviour and why that's not always easy, and what we need to think about in order to be in the right frame of mind to change our behaviour. And finally, I'm going to talk about some practical tips and ideas for integrating movement into your daily lives. So today's presentations have all been about physical activity, and we've heard this, that physical activity refers to any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscle that requires energy expenditure. And it's really important that we think about that for a few minutes, because physical activity is not just exercise. It's any bodily movement produced by the skeletal muscle that requires energy expenditure. And I think when we think about that and we start to break it down, we start to think about physical activity being a little bit more achievable across lots of different domains of our lives. So our traditional physical activity or exercise piece is this domain of leisure time physical activity. And that's your walking, your jogging, your sport, your gym, your cycling, all of these activities that we typically associate with getting out and doing some exercise. And that is a great form of physical activity, and lots of people enjoy that. And for lots of people, that's really where you want to be. But it's not the only domain of physical activity. We can be physically active through our occupation, in the work that we do, in our household chores, and also in our transport. And today's presentation hopefully will get you to think about how you can incorporate small steps for physical activity across all four domains. So in terms of our occupation, reflecting on, well, do we have an active occupation or do we have a sedentary occupation? For lots of us, it's sedentary. We spend a lot of time sitting. So how can we incorporate some activity into our occupation? And we'll reflect on that. Our household, while we may not want to think about, our jobs like hoovering or, washing and doing laundry, etc., as opportunities for activity, we are physically active during those times. And maybe it's about acknowledging the activity that we do during those jobs. But also things like gardening can be very physically demanding, and our childcare activities. So, if you're with small children, can you go outside and do an activity together, kick a football, play tag, play hide and seek, all of these opportunities to be active. Active transport, then, this is probably one of the biggest opportunities that we have. Can we displace some, be it public transport or car transport, to be active? Can we walk? Can we use our transport or our commute time to incorporate some physical activity? And for many people who are busy, this is probably one of the key opportunities where you can embed physical activity in a purposeful way, where you are getting from A to B. You just need that little bit of extra time perhaps to do it, in contrast to taking the car or taking the bus for the entire journey, for example. The other thing that we want to think about is almost the opposite of physical activity. It's this concept of sedentary behavior. So prolonged sitting or prolonged lying. And a lot of us are really sedentary in our day-to-day lives. We might have sedentary jobs. We sit at a desk all day long without moving. And how many of us spend the evening time sitting on the sofa, watching TV, on our phones at the same time? All of these are prolonged sedentary behaviours, and they're all opportunities to break up that sedentary behaviour and incorporate some physical activity into that. We know more and more that this prolonged sedentary behaviour is something that we need to target. It's not good for our health. And even when we are physically active, we really need to be mindful of the amount of time that we're spending sitting, that we're spending sedentary, and starting to break that up. So that's really achievable for a lot of us. And we'll talk through some tips about how to do that as well. And this concept of reflecting on, well, look, it doesn't have to be insurmountable physical activity. It doesn't have to be the big walk or the big run or the big gym session, but that every move counts. This aligns completely with our national physical activity and sedentary behaviour guidelines for Ireland, where we're trying to acknowledge and celebrate physical activity in every form across every domain and really be mindful about how we incorporate physical activity into our daily routines and break up that prolonged sedentary behaviour. So let's keep that in mind as we think about, well, how can you start to incorporate physical activity into your daily lives? Now, today's session is all about physical activity in terms of cancer prevention and cancer risk. And it's one of the benefits of physical activity that we can potentially reduce the risk of certain cancers by being physically active throughout our lives. And we know that there's other health benefits as well. So we all know that it's good and we all know that it's important. So why don't we just move more? And the reality is that changing behavior, such as increasing your physical activity levels, isn't easy. It is very, very difficult. And we need to acknowledge that and reflect on, well, what are the barriers or what are the factors that are limiting me from being more physically active, and reflect on those honestly and think about, well, how can you change those or take control of those in order for you to successfully change your behavior? And there's lots of barriers out there. Lack of time is probably one of the biggest ones. Lots of people on this webinar today are really, really busy. You have busy jobs, you might have long commutes, you might have caring responsibilities, be it small children, be it parents, whatever it is that life has, in your life at the moment. It can be very difficult for you to carve out time for yourself and prioritize time for yourself, even if it's to do something good like being physically active. So that lack of time is probably one of the biggest barriers that busy people will face. And it's important when we start thinking about being physically active that you set yourself up for success so that your goals for physical activity are achievable, that they are set in consideration of the time constraints that you have, and that they are practical, that they are incorporated. Maybe that active transport piece is a way that you can incorporate physical activity in a way that doesn't take a huge amount of extra time, but has lots of additional benefits. So time is one thing we all need to reflect on. Secondly, lack of social support. If you're, in a household where everybody's physically active, it might be easier for you then to be more physically active as well, because people encourage and celebrate that. But if that's not the case, well, then you're starting from scratch. You're starting from a different a different perspective. Social support is really important. Being able to meet a friend or go somewhere with a friend, being encouraged to be physically active, and being part of kind of an overall routine that's celebrated by others within your social network can be really, really helpful. Lack of energy. When you're already tired, the idea of going out and being physically active is just, it can seem very, very difficult. Lack of motivation. Is this something that you really want to do at this time? And then in the next slide, we'll think about, well, where are you? Do you want to do this? Is it something that you want to change? Fear of injury, particularly if you had a bad experience where you were injured after becoming physically active and you're fearful of that happening again, or if you've had an illness and you're returning to physical activity after that and you're not sure where to start. Lack of skill. So being worried that, well, in order for me to be physically active, I need to attend the gym or I need to go for a run, and I don't feel skilled in doing any of those. So it's important that we step back and think about, well, what physical activity is within your reach that you can do. Or if you really do want to take on a new activity that requires a new skill, how do you get the support to do that? High cost, particularly if you're thinking about physical activity with an associated cost, something like gym attendance or class attendance. And linked in with that is lack of facilities. So, we think about, having a gym to go to, but it equally could be lack of facilities in terms of getting out for a walk, safe footpaths or street lighting so that you can get out at times that are flexible and work around your busy schedule. And finally, weather conditions. The weather here in Ireland doesn't always work in our favour. And if it is lashing rain, are you still happy to get out for a walk? Is that going to be a barrier for you? So we need to think about all of these things. And I suppose, are you ready to change your behaviour? When you reflect on those barriers, which ones apply to you? Do you have the skills and the knowledge to exercise? Do you know what you're going to do? Do you know how much physical activity that you're aiming to achieve? And do you know how to do it? Do you have access to space to exercise or to social support? Do you have somebody who's going to encourage you, who you're going to be accountable to, who might go exercising with you, for example? And do you have that space? Do you have a safe footpath to get out for a walk? And if you don't at home, well, where do you have that space so that you can incorporate physical activity? And the bottom line, do you want to do it? Are you ready to change? Is your life, is it something that you can incorporate in? Is it the right time for you to change your behavior? Is it something that's already a habit? Are you trying to start a new habit? And how are you going to do that? And I think we need to reflect on all of that. What is your motivation? How are you going to do it when your energy is low? So wanting to change and wanting to be more physically active is a big part of you sitting back and being able to identify where you can find these opportunities for movement in what might be an already very busy life. So really think about how that applies to you and reflect on that more at the end of the presentation. So practical tips. So when people are busy, and really that's what we want to think about in this presentation, people who are busy at work, people who are busy at home, how can you incorporate movement? Well, let's think about this in the context of what we've been talking about. Physical activity across all, not just talking, celebrating every movement and thinking about our physical activity guidelines. Every movement counts and breaking up sedentary behavior. So if there are goals, let's think about how we achieve work and at home. So at work, incorporating movement where you can. So can you engage in walking meetings? So if you have a meeting scheduled with somebody, if the topic isn't overly formal and you're able to talk through the main points during a walk, can you do that instead of sitting on Teams together? Active transport opportunities. When you're getting to work, can you incorporate activity? And this is probably one of the most practical tips. Can you walk instead of taking a bus, taking the Lewis, taking the Dart, etc.? Can you park a little bit further away and walk in? That is, it works because you're often you're going to work first thing in the morning. You're in the right mindset. I'm going to do this now. You're going to get out and incorporate that walk, but also it has purpose. You're getting from A to B. So your walk, you're getting both exercise in and you're getting to where you need to go. Taking the stairs instead of the lift. And that's this concept of every single movement, every activity that you can incorporate is good. So celebrate those small wins. Taking micro breaks. So if you're in a sedentary job, can you say, right, hour, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a little walk. Or if you're working from home, can you incorporate some kind of exercise snacks, like doing X number of squats or lunges, or whatever it may be, that you're incorporating some small purposeful movement throughout your day in really small bite-sized chunks that's incorporated within your work schedule. At home, valuing your daily tasks is really important. So valuing when you're out gardening, I'm being physically active now. Your house tasks, when you're being physically active. Incorporating play for you and the kids. So when you're thinking about what activity you want to do some Saturday afternoon, that you're thinking about, right, well, let's go to the playground, or let's go somewhere where we can go and have a walk, or simply going out into the garden, playing football, playing hide and seek, playing take, whatever it is you want to do. Incorporating active hobbies for the kids as well. It's good for you and it's good for them. And then breaking up that sedentary time, being really mindful in the evening time about how long you're spending sitting on the sofa. Can you break that up? Can you be mindful and say, look, I'm going to turn off the telly at X time and I'm going to go and I'm going to do something else. So really even reflecting on or keeping a diary of the amount of time that you're spending sedentary in the evenings can be helpful for helping you to break that down. How do you set yourself up for success though? Because we can all do those practical tips, but how do you make sure that you actually incorporate them and that you sustain that change in behavior? Well, setting yourself up in a way that you're incorporating activity, that it's flexible and that it's affordable, that you're overcoming some of those barriers that we spoke about earlier. Things like walking, if you want to go running or if you want to go jogging or cycling, but walking is very accessible to an awful lot of people. And as we said, you can incorporate it both as your evening activity or as an active transport option. Walking works well because you can do it, you can incorporate it around your schedule. The frequency of the number of walks, you determine that. The duration, it doesn't have to be a big hour-long walk. It can be a 15, 20-minute walk, whatever works for you on a particular day. You can start at your front door or at your office door and you end there. So you don't have to drive somewhere. You don't have to go somewhere. You're not working around other people's schedules. And when you're busy, that matters. Because if you sign up for a class, for example, while that might work for some people in terms of having accountability and you've paid for it and you have a structure, for other people, if you're really busy and you sign up for a class and you start missing those classes because the scheduling of the class and the scheduling of your life just don't work together, that can be really, really difficult. So walking, running, jogging, cycling, anything that goes from door to door can work really well when you're busy. Also have a look and see what online resources are available. If it's difficult for you to get out in the evenings because of maybe caring responsibilities, see what you can join online. Are there any classes that you can link in on that you can do and get other people in the house involved as well? Setting realistic goals. You don't have to set yourself up that you're active every single day if that's not going to work for you to get started. Set yourself up that I'm going to go for a walk 2 evenings per week. Be accountable to somebody. Tell someone that you're going to do it, somebody who's going to hold you to account and celebrate your wins. When you set yourself up for success and you achieve it, that's a really good feeling, as opposed to setting yourself up for something that's going to be really difficult to achieve and then feeling, look, I'm not quite getting this. So work with you where you are and set yourself up for success. Enjoyment. It's really important that you get that buzz out of being physically active, that you feel good about yourself afterwards, that you feel you've achieved something. So make sure it's fun. Make sure it's an activity that you enjoy. If you feel that you're going running and you're really, really not liking it, try something different so that you feel good about getting out. And do try and leverage some social support. When you're returning after illness or injury, that can be tricky because, of course, you're at a different baseline to where you were before. And it can be a little bit disheartening when you start and you realize, gosh, I can't do what I used to be able to do. So you do need to go into this with a slightly different mindset. You need to have a sensible starting point. Again, setting those realistic goals and knowing, look, I've been injured or I've been away sick. So look, I need to build myself back up. That gradual progression. So your goal setting should celebrate small wins. Listen to your body, listen to what your body is telling you in terms of how it's coping with this new activity and incorporate in some pacing and some rest. Now, if you've been out injured and you've been working with someone like a physio, talk to them about how you return to exercise. Or if you've been unwell, perhaps talk to your GP or talk to your physio if you have concerns about returning to returning to activity after illness or injury. But really think about, you're at a new baseline and you're setting yourself up and you can set yourself up gradually to get back to where you were. So what should you do now? You're listening to this webinar, you're taking the first steps in terms of informing yourself around physical activity and how beneficial it can be in terms of cancer prevention. But how do you feel about increasing your physical activity? Is it the right time for you? So if you're listening and you're like, do you know what? I've no intention of starting. Life is just, I'm not in the right headspace. What you're doing right now is good. You're increasing your awareness of the benefits. You're informing yourself. You're gaining more knowledge. And that might be the right thing for you at this time. If you're thinking about starting, you're saying, do you know what? Maybe I will. I'm not sure if I'm ready, but, weigh up the pros and cons. Think about why it might be good and think about the challenges that you might face. If you start taking small steps, so you've bought a new pair of runners, or you've made a New Year's resolution, or you've bought some new exercise clothes, well, then set small, achievable, specific goals. Okay, say I'm going to get out for a walk twice a week this week and celebrate achieving that goal at the end of the week. If you've been exercising for, 6 months, you've started, you're getting into your routine, that's where you really need to start getting into your social support and your self-monitoring so that you can see improvements. You can look back and you say, gosh, 4 months ago, I could only run this distance. Now I can run a longer distance, or I can run faster, whatever matters to you. And if you're exercising regularly for more than 6 months, really find enjoyment in what it is you're doing. Focus on preventing injury and focus on preventing that relapse back to being sedentary or inactive again. So really think about where you are and what you might do to start being more physically active. So to summarise, we should look for opportunities to be physically active in every domain of life. It's not just about going to the gym or exercising at a hard level. It's about looking at every opportunity that presents across all domains of life. Set yourself up for success. Set goals that are going to work for you and celebrate achieving those goals. Remember that every move counts. Everything you can do to incorporate activity is of benefit. Tackle time spent sedentary. Be mindful of how long you're spending in the evening sitting in front of the telly and break that up. And really think about, are you ready to start? Is this the right time for you? So thank you very much for your attention.